Hello, stressed out A pushers. In this video, we're going to attempt to alleviate some of that stress. I will go through a strategy that I think will guarantee a student at least a 3 on this year's DBQ only APUSH essay. This would also work for AP World and Euro as well. Before I get into this strategy, I just want to give you a little bit of my own background so you know I have some experience in preparing students for the exam. First, I'm in my 13th year of teaching, and 7 of the last 13 I have taught APUSH. I've been an AP reader for the last 4 years, 3 of which were on the DBQ and 1 was on the LEQ. A few years ago, I helped the College Board revise the LEQ rubric. Finally, my students have had great success on the test. Every year, all or nearly all of my students take the test, and most pass. My average is well above the global average, and I do not have privileged students with tutors. I teach at a public school that I think can best be described as working class. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it. First, some basics. Why is 3 considered passing? It is because at a 3, most state universities, and some private ones, give college credit. I know there are different criteria at every school, and some elite schools do not even take a 5, the top score, for credit. But for most students, getting a 3 means college credit. Next, as you probably already know, the College Board modified this year's rubric. It is now 10 points instead of 7, and we will get into those points in a little bit. Probably a surprise to some people, but the typical score on a DBQ for the AP exam is quite low. Last year's average was a 2.5 out of 7, which is about normal. So if we correlate that to a 10-point rubric, that would be a 3.5 out of 7. And usually, around half of all APUSH test takers get a 3 or greater on the exam. So does that mean a 4 out of 10 will be a passing score? Maybe, but we definitely want to aim for higher than that. The number one thing to consider for this year's test is time. It is going to be difficult to flip back and forth on a screen between documents in either a separate Word doc or a Google Doc, or possibly your paper. So with the rubric and essay, we want to figure out how to maximize the amount of points we can receive for the amount of time given on the test. With only 45 minutes to write and 5 minutes to upload, it's not going to be possible for most test takers to analyze the prompt, sort through the docs, and write an amazing essay, plus upload it all within 50 minutes. So what points should we focus on to maximize our score? Let's now take a look at the points that would take up too much valuable time. The first point is an easy one to throw out, and that is complexity, also known as the unicorn point. Rarely is this ever awarded. On last year's test, only 0.3% got it. The second one, and it hurts me to say this because I love this point. I work on it all year with my students, but it is now de-emphasized on the test. This is contextualization. It just takes too long to get to this point, and if you go for it and do not get it, that may cost you in other areas of the test as well because of the time crunch. Lastly is the third document point, which is to use 4 out of the 5 documents that support the thesis. Instead of 4, just focus on 2 of the easiest docs to save time, and possibly a third as a backup, just in case you mess up one of the docs. Preferably the one non-text-based document. It will probably be a political cartoon or some data. So here are the points to focus on. Number 1 is the thesis, and second are the 2 docs that prove your thesis. Then the sourcing, also known as the hip points. Finally are the 2 pieces of outside evidence. I think all of those are the easiest points to pick up, and you should definitely have enough time for all of them. If you pick them up, that is a 7 out of 10, which will definitely be a 4. Even if you miss 2 or 3 of those points, it is still going to be a 3. Okay, let's move on to writing the essay. First thing you should do is read and reread the prompt. Identify exactly what it is asking and what you need to say to answer it. I'll make another video in the near future with my tips for writing a thesis. That is not complicated and will get you the thesis point. Next, look over the docs and identify the easiest. Analyze those, find the main point, and I like purpose the best for a hip point. I think is the easiest for a writer to add and connect to the thesis, and is the easiest for an AP reader to identify and give the sourcing point. If the document has a different easily identifiable hip, it's fine to go with that as well. Okay, how should it be structured? First thing is you have to clearly space out paragraphs. Put in a space and indent between paragraphs. One of the biggest problems in which kids do not pick up points they could have easily earned is a poorly organized essay with no clear intro or body. Okay, then it should go like this. Thesis in the first paragraph. Don't worry about context, just a clear thesis. Next, body paragraph number 1. Using one doc, show how it proves the thesis and the hip. Next body paragraph number 2. That should use the second document and again, show how it proves the thesis and the hip. Then clearly show your outside evidence with 2 mini paragraphs that discuss the evidence and link it back to the thesis. Finally, if time, write a conclusion that goes back over your thesis in more detail. There have been many times in the past years as a reader I gave thesis points for the conclusion because the thesis in the beginning of the essay was too vague. Okay, let's take a brief look at the example I provided that is also in the video information below. First page is the Prewriting Activities. This is a prompt recently adapted as a 2020 DBQ example. Then you'll see two documents I identified as the easiest, and they were docs 2 and 3. Then I identified my outside evidence. And on page 2, you'll see an example essay that I quickly whipped together. I did this whole thing in about 40 minutes. The red are the intro and conclusion, and the blue are the body paragraphs. Go through this to see how I link the evidence back to my thesis and how I source the documents. Okay, I hope this helps you out for this year's AP test. I plan on making some more videos on the easiest ways to write a thesis that will earn you the point, and how to link documents and outside evidence to the thesis. Subscribe to the channel for those videos.